about like Venezuela or Argentina or some other, they've got their own problems that they're dealing with. If they're hanging on every single word that the president is saying, again, maybe it would be better to do a sticks and stones type of policy, where that kind of stuff maybe not as play as much into practical policy making as some might suggest is being done as was done in that article.
Yeah.
All right, so another episode of our Life in Palm City podcast. I'm Aaron Favor.
I'm Dr. Beth Rodriguez.
And we've been doing this apparently for 26 episodes now.
That's crazy still.
Yeah, and we really should. I mean, I think in the last one you mentioned we should have more episodes. We absolutely should.
We should.
We really should.
But it's just, we get busy. I mean, life happens. What?
It does.
Did we do it? Oh, we did do it last week, didn't we? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're like, we're in a roll here now.
Yeah, we sure are. This is like the third or fourth album or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We're today we wanted to talk about the Donald Trump inauguration and President Trump's not just his election, obviously, but in general, we wanted to talk about it. This is a major event in American history and American political discourse. We talk about it in our classes, no question.
Right.
He provides endless content for us to discuss in our classes.
He does.
So anyway, let's.
I'm jump right in. First of all, I think it's really cool that he, is in the history books now because he is there's like only one other president, correct?
Right.
That has 2 terms, but not consecutively.
Right.
So, I mean, that in itself kind of just makes him as an important part in history.
Right.
But also, I was sitting as I was watching on the TV, everything that was happening. I all of a sudden just felt safer. And I'm not sure exactly why that happened, other than the fact that I really now felt like we had somebody who was a leader.
Right.
Like somebody who had an agenda, somebody who had a voice, somebody who knew what they were going to do, and they stood up and could talk for themselves and do things that it just felt safe all of a sudden. And I think that's what happens when you get somebody who is a leader, who has that confidence, and just, that's the big word. I was like, all of a sudden I just felt relief and safe.
There's a whole, theory of, and this idea of theories. It's like something that political scientists talk about. And I put that in quotations on purpose because I think that this is the kind of topic maybe that people mean when they say political science, that they would have to say that this is a theory, but rather, I mean, it's also kind of common sense that the number one primary role or ability, power of the president is to persuade people. And it sounds to me like that he does a good job of persuading people with his words, and maybe that's the primary power of the president himself. And
I'm not even sure if it's his words. I think it's his body language. I think it's the way he carries himself. Because sometimes what he says, I'm kind of like, wait, he is sometimes a little brash, but at the same time, that's kind of, you need somebody. I think that his time being in business, being on TV, really has played a really important part, especially during this time, which is such a digital time, that he is a showman.
Right.
And he knows that people, forever, if you really think about it, people don't really talk about politics like they do now. People aren't watching politics like they do now because it's boring, right? People sit around and like, oh God, unless something amazing's happening, like a war or something traumatic. But now people are watching just his inauguration. People are watching as his first 100 days goes on. He's been there, what is today? I don't even know what today is, but it's like 3 days. Day, right? And people are still watching because he is he's putting on a show. And I think it's getting more people to understand what politics are going on. But I also think it's, ticking some people off. And I think, but that's part of being good entertainment. And I hate that it's like that, but it kind of gets people drawn in. So when you get people drawn in, you can actually educate them more.
Right. Maybe it's a good tool for engagement.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad. I mean, I remember during the COVID pandemic, the Biden administration also had some showmanship, like they had a set there in the White House and it was like supposed to look, there were certain things. I think he was taking a vaccine or something. And do you remember this, that somebody either leaked or took a photo of the set, which kind of took away from authenticity
Sure,
of what they were trying to do. And that's the second time I've done this, by the way. That's
your new thing.
Reminds me of Chris Farley, the SNL commercial where he would say, "Maybe I don't,"
Yes.
What he say? I can't remember. It was an awesome skit, though. It's hilarious. And you should look it up if you're listening to this or watching this and don't know about it. Yeah, Chris Farley's classic.
Yes.
Yeah, rest in peace. Or rest in humor, we should say.
There you go. That's good.
So this, though, is kind of a plague for the Biden administration because while they have the showmanship, there's something about it that doesn't seem like real.
Right.
You know what I mean? And maybe it's the lack of spontaneity or the lack of everything seems like everything is calculated. But then when there's non-calculated things being said, there seems to be some type of a gaffe. People are also saying the same types of things about the Trump administration, even though the showmanship. Maybe it says something about what our newsfeed is saying too, like who our speakers are.
Right, who you're listening to, the media, what their own point of view, which I'm really kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right to me. Anytime that you have media, an outlet, news, I feel like they should just report the news, not necessarily report their side of the view. This is one of the big things that I know that we both kind of try to push in our classes is really, presenting all sides. And not just saying what we like, what our opinion is, because we want people to form their own opinions by giving all the information so that they can. And that's what I thought. I thought the news, I thought media really did that. But you can go. I mean, you can watch the same exact thing happen and then go to different news outlets and they perceive it completely different because they're using their opinions.
Right.
And I think, it's hard as humans not to, put some sort of emotion or opinion into it. But at the same time, that's kind of what a journalist was supposed to do, I thought.
Right.
I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right on. And it's kind of the business model of news and business of the media in general, regardless of which format you're talking about, has made that a necessity in some ways, like that there's certain people who benefit and have interests embedded in how people, whether it's intentional or not, how they tend to articulate certain things. Sometimes it makes it look one way, maybe one-sided, and maybe that's what they want.
Right.
So whether it's real or not, from the perspective of the person telling the news, may not matter as much as
that's true.
Where the news is, whether or not they're people that listen or watch them are paying attention to that kind of stuff. And the rise of influencers is a really, that was something that, again, the first time I ever even, and this probably speaks more to my age than anything, probably speaks to the in 2020 when we started hearing about social media influencers, that was the first time I'd ever heard of it, which is crazy. That's wild. That just shows kind of how probably
just disconnected them. And it is.
Well,
my kids weren't really on social media. They were, but they weren't. And so I didn't really know. And they would talk about people like they were their friends. And I was like, who is that? And it's this guy on YouTube. And I'm like, who? And then I find out they're making all this money. And I'm like, You've got to be kidding.
Right.
That is unbelievable.
Unreal. Yeah.
Unreal.
For sure.
So when we talk about Trump, there's been some controversy that's been going on. And one of the big things I saw on the news and I thought was pretty interesting, and I kind of wanted to bring it up to you, is when they were at the national service for the church service. And there was one particular individual that decided to use it as a political standpoint instead of really
the Episcopalian Church.
Right. Instead of having, really delivering a message of unity and peace and what, I think that's what everybody expected and wanted to happen. And then it happened, that didn't happen. And, I just want to know, what are your thoughts on what she had to say?
It's complicated. This morning I went to to mass this morning. Our family's Catholic. We are, privately, that's what we not only believe, but it's how we live our life. It's intimate to who we are.
Sure.
Right. We want an introspection into who you are as a person, look at the things you care about the very most.
Yeah.
That would be one of them. It's informing everything. This morning, part of the homily was the priest mentioned that Christ or Jesus needs a boat, right? And he's like preaching to the crowds. And he wants a boat. And it's like, what does that even mean? It's like a vessel. Hopefully people want to seek the truth.
Sure.
Hopefully the masses, everybody wants the truth, and that people are willing to speak up about what the truth is, and it should matter to us. This is probably kind of a good example of how different people interpret their vessel differently.
Sure.
She saw it as an opportunity maybe to kind of try to punch back.
Right. And to state her opinion about it. Right. I get that. And that's what, I kind of felt was, it wasn't, I didn't feel like it was more of the prayer service. I felt like it was her time to stand up. And we've talked about that. We talked about that with antisocial behavior. We talked about sometimes that we see that some of those behaviors are seen as deviant. And in that situation, some people did see it as deviant. Other people who agree with her would see that as, a brave thing to do at that point. Right. And the truth is we don't, it's your perception. It is your perception. Is that the time to speak up? Well, if that's not it, then when is? Are you going to get are you going to get another chance? And if you're not, then, do you take it? And I thought it was very interesting. And I also thought his reactions to it were very interesting, which it kind of, this kind of reminded me of my big brothers. Okay, they are constant. I do. I have two big brothers, so I'm the baby of four. So I have two big brothers and a big sister. But that's kind of how our family is. We make fun and we poke and we do this. And one of the things that I found that really irritated them was when I told them, "Yeah, that was not a good one," right? Or that was boring, and it's almost like that's what that behavior, that interaction happened, right? She spoke her truth. She was she was being a little antagonistic to him, which, that's kind of what a protest does. That's the point of it. And he kind of hit back with meh, no big deal. And, and I know that as the person who may have been doing, was that's worse than you saying something back.
Right.
And it's kind of, we wanted you to say something back. And when you didn't, wait, what happened?
Do you remember us, in 2020, right before everything hit the fan, we did a podcast about Andrew Jackson. I might have to take a little bit of that and put it in right here. Sure. On the final edited version of this. We talked though about Andrew Jackson and his how kind of brash he seemed and how kind of rough. He was a sticks and stones guy. Donald Trump also reminds me of, in the sense he's kind of a sticks and stones. Sure. Person. Words really aren't gonna have too big of an impact unless there's some type of a real life impact on what he's doing. That perception is not something he's gonna have to mess with too much. It's kind of like this morning or last night, there was an article that I was reading from the Miami Herald that was about how that Donald Trump was dismissive to Latin America. They're going to do it, and then again, Chris Farley. What does he say? Maybe I don't, dress up for birthday parties. Or I don't, wash my hands after yada yada. It's so funny. Anyway, okay, so he's kind of in some ways just talking about policy and we're holding him to this standard of everything should be very well thought out, seems unreasonable. They said that he was dismissive in this article of Latin America. And what really seems kind of dismissive is the way that the article was portraying the situation as if, not just, any country, south of Mexico and including Mexico, even we saw the same thing when he was signing the executive agreements or executive orders, that had to do with, the designation of the drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, things like that. They were like, did you take this up with Mexico? And he was like, no. It's like, I'm doing what's best for the United States, which is, again, should be kind of a fairly common understanding, but we've kind of adopted the perspective that if they're telling us that's what he's doing, he must be doing that. And that's fascinating because Latin America thinks for itself too. It's not like, and Latin America doesn't think as a continent. It's kind of like saying, well, Africa is poor. I think that there's a certain level of undermining of their own sovereignty that goes along that mind of thinking that seems kind of like, I would say, colonial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's a certain level of disdain for
we do this, right? If we have the group and they have some similarities, then we assume that everybody like there is that way.
Right.
And that's it. And it's just because we have that idea of that's the way it should be done doesn't mean that's the way that it should be done.
Right.
And the truth is I bet, they probably don't really want to be involved with everything. And there's a lot of times that people don't need to be involved with every single aspect of some circumstance. That's how we don't get stuff done.
Right.
That's where we see all the red lines and all the red tape and bureaucracy.
Right.
Is that when we have to have 15 hands, when really all I have to do is take it to one person? Like, let's just do that.
Yeah. Using 15 different words to say the same thing in different circumstances so that you're not offending the wrong person.
Right.
And again, I mean, we talk about like Venezuela or Argentina or some other, they've got their own problems that they're dealing with. If they're hanging on every single word that the president is saying, again, maybe it would be better to do a sticks and stones type of policy, where, that kind of stuff maybe not as play as much into, practical policy making as, some might suggest is being done as was done in that article.
Yeah.
It seems kind of also, it's kind of like a gaslighting where you're telling somebody that they're demeaning and racist and like the idea that you're kind of undermining their intellect is maybe
demeaning and racist. Yeah. Saying that, oh, well, you didn't help these stupid people.
Right.
It's like, wait, you just called them stupid. They're not, it's like, wait a minute. And yes, absolutely. I think that happens a lot. Where you're supposed to be helping, you're supposed to be doing this, but then it's like, but do they really need my help? Do they need me? Like, they are going to be fine. They are their own individuals that, they don't need me to do everything.
Right. And the thought that they're not looking out for themselves is, that may do more to undermine them in the long run than anything.
I agree.
And that we need to be there to help. And it's not that I don't believe that. Of course, there's always a place for America to be. I mean, as the most, the wealthiest nation on the planet, I would argue, and there are no doubt people who disagree with this. I think that the United States stands for law and order. And what I mean by that is not hard on criminals. What I mean by is we have upheld the rule-based order since the end of World War II. And the system that we set up has managed the longest stand of peacetime than any time period and known to history. Like we have had a unprecedented sense of power and weaponry and advancement in our economies and all these other things. And yet, by and large, we've had conflicts here and there, but it has not been another world war. And maybe that's because of other things. I don't think so, though. I think it's because the United States has been willing to stand up for and create that order and then enforce it. So people would say the natural critique is that we're the world's policemen, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, okay.
Well, that's the idea. It's like people just function better with rules and boundaries and like, this is not okay. This is okay. We just function better. If not, we have chaos. And I feel like we might have been in that kind of chaotic place for the last couple of years where we're not sure exactly like what is legal, what isn't. Can you go in and steal stuff in a store, right? And that, I just think that's still nuts to me that people were just going in and taking stuff and nothing was done. Like, why is that happening? Okay,
so do you? Of course you are. You're the expert on this subject area. I don't know any. I mean, anomie, is that the name of it? Anomie, the sociological phenomenon where there's like norms that are in shift, they're shifting.
I was like, what are you saying?
And
yes.
and people are changing what's acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable or unacceptable. Is that what that's called? Who was the person that
just because you asked me that, I can't think of it.
And one of the founders of sociology, I want to say, he was one of the big.
He
was huge. Starts with a D, maybe? I don't know. But anyway, it'll come to us later.
All of a sudden I'll be like,
pop your head in my office and say, this is what it was. Or I'll look it up on my phone.
Yeah, exactly. We'll ask AI.
Yeah, but that's what for sure. That's what it reminds me of, though, is, and it might not have been that way, but it certainly felt that way. There seemed to be so many different things, types of conflict going on, whether it was cultural or social, or it was, again, projected or perceived as being maybe a racial, and this is 2020, 2022, the whole defund the police, Black Lives Matter movement. It's, again, it's controversial, right? There's a lot of conflict involved in it. But I mean, whether or not it's spelled out, long-term change is only for the long-term to decide. I mean, if we have, and kind of the opposite happening right now, where it's only been 3 or 4 years, the country has already decided, okay, we're tired.
Right.
we need some more order. We need some more rules, a little bit more. And what is the ultimate boundary but sovereignty, and determining what it means to self-determine. I think a presidential election is special for a lot of reasons. They are tiring. I mean, every single time we have one, by the time it's over, I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that's done.
Yeah.
It's
ready for this to happen.
As much fun as it is to watch and to try to pay attention to what is really driving people's, actions in the political.
Why are you really running? Yeah.
Yeah. And trying to undiscover, I guess, those things, and then being able to test them, there in November, and having the whole, it's great while it's happening, but then it's over, and I'm glad that it's over. I'm hoping that things will slow down a little bit, and it will be allowed to slow down, so that there's not constant, perpetual domestic conflict at a time when really those rules that we had laid down after World War II are being tested like they've never been tested before. And we are, not only are dealing with a rising, emergent, quite powerful Chinese economy, which is, again, it's not something anybody's going to do anything about other than compete.
Sure.
With,
yeah.
Right. And I think China has been on the record as saying that China doesn't compete. They win, which is fascinating. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's a whole Sun Tzu thing.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than just that. And it's a scary time for, I think, and there should be, if there's not, there should be more thinking about conflict on a larger, broader scale than what our just adversaries want us to be doing, which is be dividing ourselves up.
Right. And that's the idea, is like, if the art of war probably is the idea, you can conquer them if you divide them. Yeah. Right. And that's the idea. Instead of, if we have a unity, then we're unstoppable. We say this all the time. Like, if we stand together, it's so much better. But if we had, the idea of, if we're all constantly fighting here, then stuff can be happening that we're missing out on the bigger picture. And I think I'm worried. It's always nerve-wracking to say if that's happening. And it's what's crazy is, both of my boys have 18 and 16-year-old. And anytime anybody starts bringing up the idea of, there may be another world war, I'm not just terrified for every other life, but also those boys, because the truth is if we go to world war, it's very possible the draft will kick in. And I've got 2 boys that are that other fighting age. And not that I don't ever want them to be in the military, but I also don't want them to necessarily have to experience what I've seen people who do experience going to war.
Right.
And in that way, in fact, I feel like with our new president, I feel like he is looking at that bigger picture.
Right.
I feel like he is setting more of the boundaries and the laws, and putting his fist down, kind of being the parent and saying, this is what's going to happen. This is what, and I think that's why I feel safer, right? Instead of this constant oh my gosh, I can't say it now. When not knowing, that happens. Ambiguity.
Ambivalence. Ambiguity.
I can't say the word. Anyways, but that's when it's constantly weird, unknowing. When we don't know. And I think that causes fear and anxiety and everything else that people are talking about constantly. Instead of, when we do know, and we know what's expected, we know the boundaries, we know the laws, we know everything that goes into it. If we know, then it's not as scary.
Right.
And I think, I don't know, that's maybe.
No, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I think about that. I think about that too. My kids are not that old yet, but I mean, it's certainly something that I think about more often than I'd really like to think about it, because the truth of the matter is human beings fight, and it's always been true, and it will probably always be true as long as there are people. I don't like that. I don't like the idea of my son having to deal with that, or my daughter having to deal with those types of pains, the growing pains of, and the level of instability that it creates is really quite, and it must be, there's a lot of despair. I don't want them to grow up and experience despair.
Sure.
And yet I have to also say that in this life, there will be trouble.
Sure.
Right. So
it's inevitable.
Yes.
It has to be.
Yes.
Right. I mean, because we're human.
Right.
And we do this.
And so it's important for us to know, and have common values, and to be, even if it has to be at times, be an enforceable thing. And I'm going to be real careful about that, because I don't mean enforcing censorship or policing words or doing those types of things that, if that's how you get to where you can't say what you want to another diplomatic, agent or something, and being able to discuss, business the way you need to be able to discuss it in the open fashion. You need to be able to discuss it in the secretive fashion. You need to be able to discuss it to be able to get things done. And it makes it more, of course, it makes it difficult to have conversation about anything.
Yeah.
Especially we're doing what we do and interacting with students, constantly talking about things that are already conflictual and have a lot of emotional, things caught up in them. And we talked about this before. We absolutely want that, because it's so imperative to making sure that people feel engaged. So this article again, we were discussing just earlier on in this video, what the ramifications might be of people, perceiving every single thing as being a dramatic, change of policy. Everything must be a dramatic change of policy. And I mean, if everything's dramatic, is anything dramatic?
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, isn't that normal?
It's all relative.
Isn't that just normal if it's all dramatic? Because anyway, I mean, it just kind of changes the ultimate perception there when you zoom out and kind of look at it, the Google Map perspective of it. It doesn't seem like it's that dramatic.
So the other thing that I've heard a lot about with this time around with Trump is people say it's a different Trump. It's a different Trump in office now. And again, is that just a perception? Or is it he's the same Trump, he just knows better? He's been there. You've learned. So it's just it's not necessarily a different Trump. He's not coming in with, spite and anger. He's coming in because he kind of knows what it's like. He learned last time, and now he knows, okay, this is what I need to get done. Right. They're talking from all of the places of his cabinet, member appointments, how it's kind of, it's a lot different. People were upset or shocked by some of his choices. But aren't they all getting approved? Is anybody not?
Right.
And that's the thing. It's
so far. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I think the only person I've really watched much of on TV has been the Hegseth confirmation hearing that happened a couple of days ago. But there's been, I mean, obviously there's more on the table. I think in 1980, when Ronald Reagan is president of the United States, or is elected president of the United States, and then confirmed or inaugurated on January 20th, 1981. 1981. I should have like a pipe or one of those little spitting cans or something to be able to.
A spitting.
Yes, spit can, yeah. So in 1981, people are saying that there's going to be a nuclear war, the first of its kind type of nuclear war, a massive strategic exchange, and have destroy the planet. It has to do with the need to build up arms and to be able to prepare. It comes from the whole, the adage, that to prepare for war or to have peace, you have to prepare for war. It just means negotiate from a position of strength. And we see the same thing in boxing. Like that. I love watching boxing, watching the fighters try to they're wrestling with the fact that they have to be punched at a time that they can't really allow themselves to not be in a position of power. So even when they're on defense, they're on offense.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of it, from their perspective. And so it's kind of like that in a diplomatic. So in 1984, and I'm trying to remember the exact year that that movie came out. That was about the day after, or something along those lines. It was about nuclear war, and I think that there are a lot of people that attribute Ronald Reagan's second term, or the change that he expressed in wanting to negotiate peace deals and arms agreements and things like that, had to do with that movie. And they said he watched it. He said he watched it. I mean, did he really watch it? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he did.
Is it the movie that changed it?
Right. Or was it, is that really how things work? I mean, he's a human being. We get moved. We're all moved by different things. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was an actor. Maybe he watched the movie and it compelled him in such a way. But I also think that there's a certain level of naivety in that. I don't really believe presidents change policy
because they watch a movie,
because they've seen a movie.
I don't either. Like a song came on and they're like,
Yeah, the Seinfeld episode, the song, Elaine's the song.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, no,
what was that? It was a Desperado. Is that the song?
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie, that show.
But that's the idea. Is like, I think a lot of times we try to make it a lot more simple than it has to be, but we also try to make it too hard as well. I think what is the big term right now is everything's common sense. Let's go back to the more common sense. Like, let's do something that makes sense. Don't do the crazy stuff that, it just doesn't make sense. So we're moving towards common sense. And, but as we talk about common sense, someone's common sense is different from somebody else's. And when we think of common sense, the true definition really is that it is the way that you respond to something. Common sense would be without learning. And I don't think that happens. I think common sense, we say, oh, that's common sense because we've had experience with it.
Right.
And so I think the idea is, I think that works well here. So Trump is working into what he considers now common sense because he's been through it before. He watched, and I think he was probably more involved with politics in the last 4 years than he had been probably in the last 4 years before that, before his presidency. Because he was watching and saying, oh, what I feel like is not going right. What seems out of common sense because of my experience. And so I think that's why they're using that term now. Right. And I think a lot of people are jumping on that and they really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of an echo of the Revolutionary War period too, the whole pamphlet common sense and Thomas Paine. And there's something about that term that kind of speaks to American realism, or American neorealism, maybe would be a better way of putting it. Anyway, it's just practical policy, you know, not pie in the sky stuff where you're trying to do multiple things at once. You're not trying to change human nature. And that's really the difference in the logic, I think, of different ideas in conflict with is whether or not you're dealing with things as they are, or you're dealing with how you want them to be. Yeah. Because both can be wrong, and they need each other in the sense that, if you don't have dealing with things that you want as you want them to be, then maybe there's not room for dreams and hopes and advancement and trying to achieve new things and hit these benchmarks. But if at the same time, if you're that person and not also the person who deals with things that you might not ever get any of it done. Right. So you need both of them.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's a time that, where it's time to kind of deal with things as they are. Obviously, we've got some things that we need to sort out and deal with. And maybe we haven't wanted to deal with them, even though they've been things that maybe we know we need to deal with them, like the border, for example. Yeah. It's an untenable, you can't have, I think that I've heard it put before, a country can't be a country without its borders. It's what makes it a country, and what it gives it the sovereignty and power. What gives you the power of law is the fact that there are those boundaries, and then people that are part of it and follow the rules. And jurisdictions. And I mean, Texas, if Texas were a country and Oklahoma were a separate country, and we had unrestricted trade, what's the difference, or unrestricted movement between the two countries? What's making them separate,
country,
really?
yeah.
I mean, why can't they just join together? And well, that's not happening because it's not true right now. I mean, certainly not. And it's not that the human spirit is not true and the human nature is not real. Of course it is. Like, I believe with all my heart that the individuals that are living in poverty in northern Mexico, like, have come from a place where that everyday life is a struggle. And I want to help those people. Like, I think most Americans want to help other people, and including, other countries. And it's got to be quite hard to deal with. And from a perspective, I wish that people would give other perspectives a chance in terms of the policy arena, specifically because you can deal with that probably in a more sympathetic way, or even an empathetic way, when you deal with the reality of the need for certain restrictions.
Sure. And I think, that kind of brings about the thing you were just talking about, the pie in the sky, right? The, what is it? Oh gosh. What is it called? Where the Miss Universe, that's it. Miss Universe or Miss America or whatever, right? They're all the answers. What do you want to do? World peace. Okay. Well, yeah, that's but that's going to be pretty hard, right? I want to get rid of all hunger. I want to get, and it's like, right. I get it. But we have to work on the stuff that we can work on in order to get there, right? We have to solve the problems that are right in front of us so that we can get there. And yeah, it'd be great if we could. And it seems like it should be so easy, but it's not. And I think the reason it's not easy is because we are humans. And, there's just different things that come into play. And so these big, yes, let's cure hunger. Let's have world peace. It sounds great. And it sounds like that should just be easy. Let's just all join hands and sing Kumbaya. But that's just not how it works, right? There's going to be someone who's not okay with that. That's like, I'm not joining hands. There's something that I need out of this. And that's just kind of the way we've worked. So we have to solve the problem in front of us before we can even move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so I think I think hopefully that's what we're doing. We need to solve some problems. And I'm hoping that we'll see that happening very soon. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And it certainly doesn't change the way we deal with any of the things that we deal with on our campus.
No.
We deal with every situation as if it's its own unique problem that needs to be resolved in the way that we do things at Amarillo College. It is it's something that we're discussing from the perspective of a legitimate authority, which is what you need. You need a legitimate authority to deal with it. We're not talking about opinion or personal opinion, or what the policies are of Texas or if in Texas, we've got to talk about that too, because it's its own legitimate authority, right? It's got its own interests in this whole deal, and their legitimate interests that have been governed and elected by consent of the American people, and or the Texans, I should say. That I don't know if Texans.
Yeah.
Well, we are Texans.
We are.
We are what we are. So anyway, I say that because I think that also it can be hard and difficult to conflate that stuff. We were talking about this. I guess we talk about this sometimes in terms of the law, and I don't know if you guys do or how y'all might cover it in maybe a different way or a different approach. In your social psych classes. In government, we talk about how one word can mean different things, or two separate words can be employable in the same fashion sometimes. And it can be a matter of choice or preference as to whether or not you're using this term or this term. And today we talked about a little bit of it talking about bias a little bit. There's an ad, an awesome political ad out of Alabama. And to me, it doesn't really matter where it's coming from, but rather the amount of content that this guy packed into this 1 minute political ad that took him from a 0.6% this abysmal number in the polls to 25% of it really gained a lot of traction just on this 1 minute ad. If he had gotten another one, he probably would have won the election, which is crazy. He did not win the election, but he did have this extremely popular political ad, and it's his choice of words in combination with the things that he's doing, in the ad that really makes it what it is.
Yeah.
Conflating that, though, can cause problems, not when you're promising to do something, but when you're trying to actually do it.
Yeah.
It can make it more difficult. The way you promised it, in other words, it really needs to be the way you fulfill it. Because if they're two separate things, it makes it difficult to do either.
Right. Then you just seem like a hypocrite.
And there's a credibility issue. Yeah, a hypocrite.
That's it. Exactly. Okay. And then the other thing that a lot of people have been talking about lately, I mean, it seems like a lot of course, it's going to be new with everybody changing, was the whole Elon Musk gesture.
Yes.
I've only seen the clip that everybody says, but I haven't seen the whole thing. So I don't even know. But everybody's like, oh, he is saluting Hitler. He is doing the Nazi Hitler, whatever. And I'm like, is he really though?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've watched stuff on Elon Musk and brilliant, socially awkward.
Sure.
And so I don't know that he actually did. I don't think he was hi Hitler. I don't think that happened. I think he's just weird. Right. I mean, and that's not a bad thing. I like weird, but it's just different. And I think his social awkwardness, it's like he's trying to do something and he's getting out on stage and I think he was excited. I think that in the moment it was just an action that happened, kind of like pumping your fist or doing, and I don't know that there was no militia. I can't talk today. This is my problem. I've been teaching class all day. No malicious intent in that situation. But then again, I haven't seen the whole thing. I've only seen the clip that, it kind of looks like maybe he did for a minute, but just because I've watched stuff on him and kind of looked, I'm like, but if if you've seen him, he is kind of has a little. He
is. Yeah. I mean, no, he is.
He's different.
I mean, I don't know him. I've only seen articles about it. I've seen the picture.
Yeah.
I've not seen even the video of him doing that. On the other hand, I mean, I don't feel like I need to defend it because I don't really know what he was doing. I don't know him.
And see,
but it sounds like that would be an easy way to maybe to put that diminish responsibility for it. I'm not trying to do that. I think
you're doing.
It's not really my
diffusion of responsibility. I don't want to talk about it.
Right. That's no comment. Right.
Yeah, but I think and that's like it kind of highlights this idea too, though. That any action, once we label somebody as something, then any action they do, we're trying to do the confirmation bias. Right. We're trying to say, see, there he goes. That's what he's doing. See, that's happening because it just makes us right. And we don't have to change our ideas.
Right.
And I think when we do that, it becomes really...
I meant to tell you, I used your definition of bias as a cognitive shortcut, or the body is going to do the most efficient thing for itself.
And our body just doesn't.
What's in its most interest, or in its best interest.
It's very efficient.
Yeah. So Elon Musk, those things that make him kind of strange is, again, we've discussed in previous episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what makes him kind of a unique leader in his industry specifically. This is kind of the time for people like that because it's a brand new industry. It's never been done before. He was the person willing to take the gambles and the big bets, and then to be able to fulfill some of the promises of it, learning from the mistakes along the way. What's kind of made this an interesting argument and probably made him even more of a target in the press has been that his association with the Trump campaign there in that Pennsylvania constituency, and then there towards the end, I think he made some type of offer there with the voters of Pennsylvania, and I don't know the ins and outs of it. Who knows what's what? It's in the middle of a campaign, and that's part of the issue here when we conflate those types of things. Like this is a legal problem. It is a legal problem, maybe. But I mean, the fact that it's going on at a time when there's a political campaign makes that hard to tell for anybody. And the fact that I wish that there was more, and it's impossible. Wishing your life away. That's not really, I like the fact that there's a public discussion about it. That's really probably what's important about it is that there's a public discussion about it. No, it's not going on. That's where corruption happens, when it's like behind
the doors, right? And no transparency. And all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, there's this and right. Exactly. So I think it is good. I think like bringing all these things up and talking about them just allows you to be said and then either be, yeah, okay, you know what, that is right. And it did happen. But even if it didn't or whatever's happened, you know, if there's any issues, we can talk about it. And I think that's where I feel like our society, our culture kind of moved away from, is instead of talking about the things that we thought there may be something that's uncomfortable, we just stopped talking about it.
Right.
We stopped. You didn't want to say anything. You didn't want to offend people. You don't want people to cancel you. You just didn't want it to happen. So you just didn't talk about it, which then made it even more awkward.
Right. Certainly. Because you're kind of like shutting down a whole part of the, what people want to, I mean, and whether it's, again, this is the whole thing. If it's legal and there's certain boundaries that are being enforced on his situation there in that Pennsylvania example, or something else like I think there's also another discussion about the propriety of like the business potential conflicts of interest and other things like that. And
always.
I think that there's a certain level of social like concern though, that, you know, that you're going to have what are we pretending? Are we pretending that we don't have certain examples of capitalism where you're specifically targeting one group of people and allowing them to benefit from your policies, but not other people? That is absolutely happening.
It is. And that people act like it isn't.
Yeah.
What?
The 2008 financial crisis is a perfect example of that crony capitalistic idea. But I mean, I think people are scared or worried that that's going to happen on an even broader scale under like in this future market where everybody's trying to compete to get their foot in the door, right? I mean, it's not just him, it's a whole slew of people that were also there at the inauguration, and the fact that they're kind of there's a certain like aspect of this where they're donating money to the inauguration itself, and then maybe expecting kind of like a pay to play type of thing, you know, like there's a certain level of optics that are in play there that just make it look uncomfortable. It's not really, it might be, I guess, a legal issue, but that's not for me to decide, because I am absolutely not the person to decide that. Definitely. But it is definitely something that I think people should approach with caution, because sometimes the public conversation can shape the way that people have to respond to things. And we want the best interest of the country to go first, not the perception of the best interest of the country to go first. Because as we talked about and identified a second ago with your kiddos, I feel the same way about mine. I want them to inherit a peaceful and prosperous world.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. But you're just talking about, you know, everything that it is going on, but we try to act like it isn't because we don't want it to. That's just not how it works. Did you see House of Cards?
I saw the first season of that.
Okay. And I liked it because it did. I felt like it kind of showed that, there are favors done. That's how business is done.
Sure.
Right? If you need somebody to vote for you, then you do, you know, like, hey, this is what I need you to do, and I can help you out here. But that's how everything's done. Okay, even right now, so we're getting prepared for the Emerald High football banquet today. I mean, it's going to be tonight. And so
it's exciting.
It is. But just like there's things that, you know, people that can help you. And so then like they recruit you to help with the banquet because they know that you know somebody, and because you know them, now maybe they'll help you out. And that's just how it works. And so it's not just in Washington, D.C. It's not just in businesses. It happens in booster club meetings. It happens in PTA. It happens all the time. You ask people, someone has a car, you need a ride. Hey, give me a ride. You know what? I'll wash your windows. Okay, that's the idea. It's like, I'm doing something for you. I need you to do something for me. And that's just how the world works.
Right.
But I mean, maybe on a bigger scale at some points.
Right.
And sometimes it does, of course, give that advantage to people who have the ability to give more, to get more.
Yeah.
But that is what capitalism pretty much comes down to. It's like,
right. It's a transactional thing
absolutely.
where you don't want that to happen across the board, but you also can't stop human nature from being present. That's probably the source of all of this. I mean, is just people being
people.
We are broken, whatever. I mean, that's the thing, is it's broken. Okay. If it's just people being people and it's not broken, okay. But you still have to admit that there are things that are happening that may be outside of the control, not only of the people that are making the decisions, but also of the people actually making the decisions. You know, like there's maybe something else in control of it that's kind of transcendent of just the individuals, and it's like common to every person.
Yeah.
That we have, 3 or 4 major needs, and I don't know what those are, by the way. What are those? The
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes, thank you. Yes. The hierarchy of needs. And I'm supposed to know that, by the way. I think my understanding is, as a teacher,
you should.
I'm going to be shamed now.
No, you're supposed to know Bloom's taxonomy or whatever hierarchy thing, because that's the analyze and instead. But Maslow's, you should just know as a human.
Yeah, right. And at the end of the day, people get hungry and they need shelter.
Yes.
And they need water, and they need to be taken care of.
Loving and belonging.
Right.
And then they can be their self.
Right.
Best self.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I mean, if you ask me that tomorrow, I won't be able to.
I will too.
Maybe we should create like a notes thing here on this podcast for people. Anyway, I'm just kidding with you. That's the teachers. That's the teachers coming out in us. But anyway, this is I think it's a good conversation to have. Obviously, we've got 4 years ahead of us in terms of content. And that's the only way to look at this, by the way, is content for us.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's about us.
It always is.
No. So anyway, it's going to be, I think that it's going to be an interesting time in the upcoming. I mean, of course, we've got already things that are happening that is going to fill our plate with potential topics here in the next couple of.
One thing real quick. Yeah. And then I would like to talk about it, but it's the idea about the vaccine for cancer. Did you see that?
A little bit. You're talking about is this had to do with the AI project?
Yes.
And
I was.
What did they call it? Stargate.
Yeah, it's AI. And it was a meta person. Is that what they called it? Like they were saying, okay, first we'll have a meta person where that person can go and run all your errands and do all the stuff while you're doing and it's like, oh, okay. But I'm excited for that because I have 45 things to do. But then they were talking about in the same aspect is, well, if we have the ability to kind of have, play this and have AI be able to understand, then they can run thousands and millions of possible experiments to figure out what it is that's causing certain cancer. I was like, that's really kind of cool. So that's something we should be, kind of watching and looking at, because it kind of hits. It kind of looks at a lot of things that, of course, cancer touches almost everybody. Yeah. I mean, there's almost every single person can say, yes, I've been dealt with something to do with cancer. And just the fact that we had talked about AI, and I think, this is one of the good benefits that we would come from it, and not such a Terminator scary into the world type thing. Yeah.
And I think the part of I wish that we had gotten, by the way, we messed up last week's video. I messed up last week's video. It was definitely not Madeline. I'm the one that did it. And I take responsibility and feel bad about it. But, and by the way, Madeline, thank you for doing this again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're looking forward to getting to see this.
Yeah.
But I wish that people could have seen our faces while we were talking, because, if you listen to the content of that, we're talking about the Matrix and Terminator, and of course it's not, these are movies, they're not like the real, surely in the Terminator reality, that it wasn't all negative. There were like positive things that happened, because otherwise they would never have selected to allow AI to take over this to begin with. Like if they'd have only seen the negative things, then they would never have seen the benefits that it could provide, and maybe even like the potential for benevolence and good and goodness. Cancer would be a wonderful thing to be able to treat in a more efficient, effective way. I think that people have been wanting that for a really long time, obviously, since forever. Since forever, since cancer's been around. And it's in my lifetime, I have not ever seen a real promise fulfilled in that world in medicine, like in the same way that I hear it talked about. And I'm sure that there's probably examples somewhere, but I don't know about them. It seems like this is just as big as the inoculations for or the discovery of the inoculation for smallpox or
polio,
or something along those lines. Jonas Sachs or whatever that guy's name was, that said, right?
I think it is.
That's a fascinating story. It's not really something I'm not really, I need to read a book about him because he seems like a hero, a real hero. But anyway, so this AI, the ability for AI to be able to determine, or be able to select, gazillion scenarios and run them all and figure out what the most likely, the best options would be for somebody in a certain position, like in the human. I mean, who knows? I feel silly talking about it because I really don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, again, but it's fascinating.
It is fascinating. So we'll have to that's one of those things that we're going to have to watch.
Let's bring in guests. And by the way, we're in a different place than we were last time.
Hopefully it's better.
I hope so.
We'll see.
I mean, it was just getting real scrunched in another place. And we had, I don't know, we're trying new things because we want to get the format right so that we can do this more commonly and it be something that's kind of stable and have
getting better and
instead of having to invent and reinvent and then invent and reinvent and improving what we have that's stable rather than having to reinvent it every time would be helpful, I think. And anyway, we're glad to be here today, and I mean, as I am every day.
Yeah, and we'll just we're excited to keep talking and see what else. And even I would love for more people to I cannot subscribe, my goodness. And you know what, please tell us what you want to hear. Tell us what you would like to hear us talk about and kind of explore to see if there's any, I don't know, our perspective. I don't know, from where different places around the world, and see how you guys feel about different stuff that we're talking about. And, we'll revisit stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will.
So,
I mean, we have no reluctance to look back on the past and try to identify common themes and, things that keep coming up again and again, and why they keep coming up again and again.
Yeah.
Why is that? And also, please make sure you if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the like and subscribe, because that is a goal that we're shaping here in this new format. Is we'd like to have 1,000 subscribers in March. So that's kind of a bold goal. Hopefully it's a good goal, and we meet it.
I hope so, dude.
So thank you very much. Y'all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.